This morning has been inspirational because it has been about inspiration, action, and ideas. And so I'm now going to change the course and avoid inspiration, and avoid action, and just talk about ideas. The other thing that worries me also, I don't like dessert. You know, you eat, and I don't like dessert, because after a long lunch, someone says, would you like some more? You tend to go, no, I'm full up, I'm a little bit. And I'm just worried that you're sitting there going, oh no, I'm full up, no dessert, please. And the reason, actually, I'm speaking now is to go back to what Dwight Jaggard said yesterday about the ego bias. Dino wrote to me and said, would you like, I was going to do a workshop, would you like to do a speech, a plenary, as I understand? And I had ego bias. I said, yes, I would love to. And then I realized, cunning, Dino, cunning. You just want someone to talk while everyone sleeps the lunch away. So I am your walking, talking siesta. That's what I am. All right? I want to talk about culture today. The word culture. Interestingly, yesterday, between 9:30 and 1 o'clock, the word culture was used 47 times. It's used all the time. And I want to investigate that because, as Dwight again said last night, I think at the very heart of the world, of its people, of its individuals, and in the very heart of those individuals, culture dominates. I work at the United World College of Southeast Asia. We have a head who throws himself into the laps of Singaporeans, if you weren't aware of what that college is. Our mission statement, that's our, Nelson Mandela, he no longer is quite clearly, but he looked at, we want, just like tGELF, we want to make the United World College movement, 14 colleges worldwide. We see education as a force for good. It helps to change the future. And Nelson Mandela looked at that when he was the president, and he said that. I think it's fantastic. I'm not going to read out slides. I always get a little worried by people who put up a slide and then assume none of you can read it, and therefore will read it out for you. I am not going to be doing that. But if you look at that, there is the word culture. Really importantly, because I've done my homework, because I'm frightened of the chemicals, I also went and looked at the tGELF mission and vision, and if you see in that, the word culturally diverse emerges. Now remember, this word was used so often yesterday. And if I looked at the conference, the brochures, People's Rights Up, what's happening? This is what's happening. The word comes again and again and again and again. It's always there. We use it all the time. We even talk about the culture of catching a taxi. You like that? If you want to know how to try and catch a taxi in Bangkok. You know, you show them a map and they don't know where to go. You feel like saying, look, get out, I'll drive. Sit in the back, I'll drive. It's all the time. Now, because we use it so often, because I think it's almost a buzzword, it's a cliche, I sometimes feel like that. Now, I have to admit, you probably weren't expecting me to quote Hermann Goering in a speech about responsible leadership in the future, but that's sometimes I get that reaction. I think we have to look at what we mean by culture, why we use it, and how it is the pulsating heart of our existence. This is the roadmap, as it were. I'm going to look at culture and its influences. I'm going to look at culture, how we get it. We're not born with it. And then I'm going to ask and hopefully pose a significant question that might make you go, It might make you go, ugh. I'm not sure. Let's see. So I'm going to start about culture and its influences. And I'm going to go and I'm just going to try and picture some ideas of when we use the word culture, what do we mean? I'm going to start with art. Now, I had intended to encourage everyone in this room to have a kind of internal mental slideshow when I said this. I was going to say, all right, I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes, and I'm going to say, Every time I say change, I want you to change in your mind another picture when it says culture and art. And then I thought, hang on, it's after lunch. If they close their eyes, they will never open them again. So I've done the work for you. So if you look at art, just thinking about culture and art, what do we mean? Well, often there's boom, suddenly you go culture. What people begin high culture. But you then probably, most people in this room say, well, yeah, that's cultural, but it's not kind of my culture about art. I can understand it. You get something like that. That could have been a mental slideshow. You could have something like that. And hopefully, as we've gone through that, there's been a reaction, which is, yes, culture, but Then you look at sport, and we have that. Now, I put that there. As you can tell, I'm not American. Some of you are asking whether I'm human. But I once attended a lecture on culture, and the person stood up and said, you can understand the whole of the American culture by the baseball diamond. Thank you. I don't understand the baseball diamond at all, which probably understands why I often have problems trying to ingratiate myself with Americans. Right, so, why do that? I'm not quite sure. Now, okay, in this country, bang, you can sit there and you all go, oh, yes. And for once, an Englishman can stand up on stage and talk about cricket because we beat the Australians. Doesn't happen often. Doesn't happen often, so we're just going to milk it and milk it and milk it. But again, there's culture and sport. And again, do you notice what might have happened? You might look at their baseball, cricket, boxing, might happen. On ritual, to go through this, these are cultural phenomena. This is what I say, close your eyes, think of ritual of culture. Could have that. Could have that. We're using the word, we're attaching the word culture to these manifestations. And we can continue on education. I love this picture. I think it sums up everything about education. Just look at it. There, in an image, are the types of students. You've got the panicker. I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to get there before the clock. You've got the person stage left, they're looking there saying, I don't like my teacher, I am not learning. And the guy in the middle, like me, help! Style of education, thankfully, that is long gone. This is an interesting one. In China, education. There's going to be a program on British television very shortly, which is called, Are Your Schools Tough Enough? And what they did, you're looking there saying, my school is plenty tough enough. I don't want any more. But what they're doing is they got Chinese teachers and a teachers exchange, and they came over and they went into a state school and they said, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to teach you for 12 hours a day. We're going to start at 7 and we're going to finish at 7. You're going to have 2 20-minute lunch breaks. You are going to sing and salute the flag. You're going to be wearing the uniform. You're going to be cleaning your own classroom. You are going to be concentrating on note-taking and repetition. And you're going to do this 12 hours a day for a month. How long do you think the British last? 7 minutes. Well done there. All right, but it is. It's a culture. And then you've got something like this. A classroom at breakfast where you're sitting around chatting. They say, okay, recognize. So they get education, culture, on expectations. I'm just talking one type of expectation, to do really well in your exams. I was worried about this image because I suspect that there's a kind of brown bias in this room. So I thought, put up one of the others. You go to a great university, you get a good job, this is the expectation, this is culture. You end up with a wonderful family, and if you're lucky, you float down the canals of Delhi. Well remembered. Okay. And on opinion. This is the important, sir. The National Rifle Association. Some people think it's great. Some people go, ooh. The comedian once said, he noted the fact that the National Rifle Association say, guns don't kill people, people do. And then he said, I think the gun helps. You can't go up and go bang, and they're going to go boom, boom, are they? I think the gun helps. But that is, some people go, hooray, yes, have a gun, take it from my father's arsenal. Bit political, I'm sorry. And then you can move on. That's a cultural. Something more serious. Stop the death penalty. We can move into these areas. They're cultural. That's what I'm beginning to argue. They're cultural. If you look at the influence of culture on all of these, in actual fact, culture's influence is that. All right? So if it's that, gosh, it's important. Gosh, we better get it right. We better understand what it is and how it works and what it means to me. Well, not me personally, me as a sort of thing, everyone. People think culture does that. Has an imprint. Yes, we know. Jonathan, you're patronizing us. Of course we know. But let me think. Are they my beliefs? We look at that, and we sit there and react. And I talked to Sujeev, who told me how to pronounce the name of this festival in Nepal, and I tried, and I tried, and I tried, and I failed. So I'm just going to say it's the festival in Nepal. Okay, thank you. Still can't get it. See me afterwards and just... Now, we could look at that, and some of us may go, and some must go, yeah, and some must go, all right, not me, but it's cultural. This, same-sex marriage. Same-sex marriage and having children. I got caught in Paris once. Not illegally, I was just in Paris, and I was walking down Paris, and they had this really big march against single-sex marriage. And all these wonderful, great French, yes, but great people were walking along. I like France. I live in France. I think it's a great country, but they are kind of French. Sorry, shit. And they were dead against that, and they're cultural and cultural. It's really belief. It's really belief. Are they my beliefs? Maybe not. Are they my beliefs? Maybe not. Are they my value judgments? What is right? What is wrong? This individual looks on this person and thinks and has an opinion and has a value judgment. This individual looks on this person and has a thought, an opinion, a value judgment. Yes, no, whatever. If this person looks on that, and if this person, he's still looking at the other one. Have you noticed that? I'm still looking that way, darling. If this person looks on that, very, 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 very different reactions. Is it them? Is it me? Or is it culture? Perhaps not. Are they my words? We use language all the time. Are they my words? Domestic helper. Maid. Servant. I could take it further. Slave. We're using these words. Freedom fighter. Terrorist. Fundamentalist. Are they my words? Or are they cultured? Jungle. Rainforest. Earth's lungs. Are they my words? Probably not. Are they my opinions? We look at that from history. And I hope we sit there and we go, ugh, wrong. Thank goodness it's a thing of the past, or almost. We have a very, very strong reaction. What about this person? Do you think they would have the same reaction as you or I? Certainly not. This is the impact of culture. Because culture, at its root, fundamentally affects what we see. And that doesn't mean we see something and go, yeah, I know, I can interpret it. I understand. I can only repeat this, but I understand that we can look at this, and some of us can be completely Philistine and go, lump of rock, nice color. Other people might say, phenomenal demonstration of nature. But for the Aboriginal people of Australia and this particular region, they see not a rock, not color, but something completely different. And the only way I can get close to this is use a personal example. I'm not religious, and I hope that doesn't sound rude, but my family are very Catholic. And in the Catholic rite of Mass, there is a moment which is called transubstantiation, when wine and unleavened bread, through the officiation of the priest, becomes the body and the blood of Jesus Christ. It becomes. It's not the Anglican belief which says it's a symbol of it, representative. It becomes. And I have seen people at Mass, my father, looking at wine and unleavened bread, and when transubstantiation happens, he changed. He saw his belief. It's that powerful. Don't think it's just, oh yes, it's an interpretation. It's like putting on funny glasses. It changes the way you see the world. This person and the culture that that child is going to receive, how will they see that? How do they look on that? Now, we look on that with horror. Do you think they would look at that in horror? No, probably not. What I find incredible about this, believe me, this is a postcard. This was a postcard made in the 1930s. Dear Mum and Dad, wish you were here. You know, isn't it incredible? But when that child, with the culture they have, and that mother, with the culture that she is giving, when they see that, they're seeing something completely different to us. Completely different, and it's that powerful. It affects what we say. Let's go back to that. These people, that was done to them because they raped women. They raped women. So we were told. The definition of rape in this culture's mind at that point in history was any sexual relations, consensual or otherwise, between races. It's not rape. That's not rape. But if you call it rape, Now, I'm not saying that people who say they're rape, we should do that to them. But if I go up to someone and say, how many people in this room think that rapists should be punished? Most of us would go, yeah. Well, not quite like that. They go, yes. But if I say, how many people in this room believe that people who have consensual sex between races should be punished? Not many people are going to. So use the word rape. Use the word jungle. We can cut down a jungle. My backyard's a jungle. Cut it down. My backyard's a rainforest. Touch it, and I'll slap you. Okay? What we say. And what we say is how we think. This is a phrase that the American army still use. A permanent state of pre-hostility. Does anyone know what that is? Yes. Peace. You ruined my joke. Well done. It is. I'll tell another one. I'll get out. My father. Out, please. Leave the room. My father worked for NATO in the 1960s and 1970s. It's still going, NATO, which is amazing. And in the 1960s, he said, I have to call this object a handheld communication device. You know what that? I'm going to ask you directly. And if you know, I'm just going to cry. Do you know what a handheld communication device was? Ha! A pencil. In the night, a pencil. My father came back and said, son, because he talked like that, son, have you got a handheld communication device? And I gave him my pencil. But a permanent state, it is peace. But if we walk around saying, we're enjoying peace, we're enjoying peace, we're in a prolonged period of peace, that's fine. But if you say, no, we're in a prolonged state of pre-hostility. What happens to our mentality? Well, that happens to budgets. We spend $640 billion on military, and you can see things unimportant things like education, international affairs. Phew. Now, I don't like bumper stickers. It's a strange follow-on, but I don't like bumper stickers. For example, if you come across a card that says, baby on board, why would that make a difference? Does that mean everyone drives around saying, if there's a grandparent, a parent, or an adolescent, I'm going to ram them? Oh, no, I can't do that. There's a baby. Like, they get me. But there was one bumper sticker that I saw when I was living in America in the late 1970s, and I actually wanted to go out and hug the woman. I'm British. I don't do that often. Look at this. I think it's a fantastic. We can't do that if we live in a permanent state of pre-hostility. Can we do that if we live in peace? Do you see how important it is? Footprints on the sand culture. I argue that culture doesn't do that. Culture does that. That is the impact it has. So let's look at that culture. How do we get it? If it's that important, here, have culture. You've got to understand what you're getting. Let's look at it. So, all I really want you to very quickly is to pick up the words that I have put in larger font. Going through the anthropologists, looking at what they're saying. Try not, as I said, it's not important to read the whole, it's just getting the idea of it. And we go through the history of anthropology, and we can draw important conclusions. Culture is learnt, number one. And this is kind of a vicious circle. But what we learn is dictated by our cultural background. And you may be going, hang on a moment, it's learnt, but what we learn is, I'll try and explain and see how that works. It is a system of symbolic meaning. Right? So those are the things I want to take as we go through the next stage. So how is culture learnt? The first one is enculturation. It's a really ugly word. Some of you hopefully say, no, it's not a word. But it is, sadly, and I apologize, and I blame certain people for it, but there it is. It's the word. And that is what the definition of enculturation is. Right? So the question you have to ask is, does that mean, look at invites, induces, compels, younger gen, does that mean we're kind of like a photocopier? Are we like this, like father, like son? That's a frightening picture, isn't it, really? Right? The father looks evil. Does it mean that? Well, of course it doesn't. Because if that was a simple enculturation, my children would still be driving around in cars like that thinking that they are cool. They don't, thankfully, and nor do I. I love that, all right? That is not what it means. But let's just look at the culture check. This is what enculturation is. Now, people usually shake hands when they are introduced to someone. Okay? They normally do that. I'm British, of course, that's what we do. Ooh, don't touch me. Hand, okay? I'm married to a Belgian. Francophones, gosh, they kiss all the time. All the time they kiss. I'm married to a Belgian, and I live in France. Now, in France, you kiss twice. In Belgium, you kiss 3 times. I get confused. I just smother people with kisses. Just absolutely smother people with kisses. But there it is. The next one. I think it's all right to blow your nose in public. That seems obvious, doesn't it? Some people find it deeply offensive. It depends how you blow your nose. If you go and go on for about 10 minutes, put it in your pocket and say, hello, I'm British. It depends. It depends. But that's what we do. We blow our nose in public and don't think it. Have you noticed those people, it's anthropological, people with their nose, some people just fold it up really neatly and then put it back in their pocket. Some people just scrunch it up, leave it in their trousers, and it just leaks. Okay, another lecture, perhaps. Actually, no, Shiv is saying, don't get this man back at all. More serious, it's all right to cane or smack your child. In Singapore, it's fine. In New Zealand, it's illegal. It's all right for parents to give their children alcohol at family meals. There is French Francophone influence in our family. My son's 14, 15, at the family table, we allowed them to drink wine. Say some people. Kiwis, New Zealanders, put him in jail. We can get more serious. And that's it. Students call their teachers by their given names. I try and encourage people to call me by my given name, Jonathan. They can't. I say, go and practice. Go, stand in front of the mirror, go, and they can't. Because as soon as you call a teacher a given name, you acknowledge that they are human. And as we know, teachers are not human. Standard fact. It's all right for parents to decide who their children will marry. It's all right to marry a 10-year-old girl. There are some cultures. It's all right. South Sudan, Saudi Arabia. This is culture check. This is enculturation. Do not underestimate it. Because enculturation changes that little boy to that angry adolescent. That is how strong it is. Brilliant quotation, Richard Dawkins. Absolutely fantastic. Spot on. It's always a bit depressing when a quotation gets a photograph and not me. So I kind of cry. Okay, so that's what I want. Now, the next one, diffusion. Second, how is culture learned? Diffusion. Here is the definition. All right? So what does this mean? Well, bang. Chicken tikka. This is, as I'm sure you all know, this is the United Kingdom's national dish. So I'm also glad to report that the spirit of colonialism still lives in our kitchens. We nick things and we don't care. All right? So it is. Now, it can be also profoundly moving. Do you know the second most produced play in Japan, apparently, is Hamlet? I think Hamlet is a most fantastic play. But there's a cultural diffusion. But it also can be quite worrying, quite disturbing. Playboy in Indonesia. Diffusion. So we can walk to see McDonald's in Delhi. I used to love the Portuguese. I don't anymore. I used to love the Portuguese. I lived in Portugal. McDonald's opened in Lisbon in the middle 1980s, and they closed. It was the only city which McDonald's closed for a long time, because the Portuguese just don't get fast food. They just don't get it. They kind of turn up, say Big Mac, and they're there for 5 hours. Just to carry on chatting, you know. Come and get out, it's fast food, please move. No. Eventually they go, so they closed it. I thought, what a wonderful, I'll live there, no McDonald's. And then they saw the faith or whatever, and they now eat nothing but McDonald's. But it changes. Another thing that strikes me, my son graduated from Birmingham this year. And Birmingham is just full of ethnic diversity, sartorial diversity, fantastic place. And when I went to visit my son occasionally, they would all be wearing their traditional dresses. You see this kind of rainbow of cultural sartorial elegance. And yet at graduation, they all wore Western business suits. Why? Because if you're going to really be taken seriously in education, be a Westerner. I don't believe that, by the way. Don't sit there saying, I'm going to send him something very rude. But it's quite interesting. It made me think. I'll move that picture. And the other thing about culture is this notion of symbolism. So there's enculturation, and there is diffusion, and there's also this crucial notion of symbolism, which is artificially created. Okay? It's arbitrary. Right? So what do I mean by that? A cute, lovely little creature walks past. It's got big eyes, it's furry, it's small, 4 legs, a lovely little tail, and it's ginger. And we look at it and we go, cat. Ah, cat. And so we call that thing a cat. We could have called it anything. Cats. Do you know that the cat and another creature was the creature that made Darwin stop believing in God? Cats have a lot to blame. And did anyone ever have pictures of cats, little kittens in buckets saying, save me? Have you ever seen those? You, when you grow up, are going to torment mice. It's really strange. Don't like cats. Things like that. But we could have called it cute, furry, big eyes, 4 legs. We could have called it a naked, mole rat. We could have called that. And we would have all loved. We would have had pictures of naked mole rats in bins going, save me. Everyone else who's been speaking this, they've given you wonderful follow-ups. Read this book, go to this site. All I can do is go and look at a picture of a naked mole rat. It is conceivably the ugliest creature you've ever come across in your entire life, and all you can do is feel sorry for it. So just go away and look at the naked mole rat. It is, and think, if it wasn't for the forces of culture, we could have called that a cat. It's extraordinary. Now, so, this is greetings, right? Arbitrary. In France, kissed twice. In Belgium, kissed, well, France twice. Fine. In India, another form of arbitrary. I like this picture because the woman in glasses behind doesn't look as impressed, does she? She's not quite as pleased with the person who's just walked through. Now, these are, we could have decided that the best way to greet people is to do this. We could have decided it, completely arbitrary. And so lots of people will go and see their future parents-in-law and say, hi, Mum. We could have done it. I don't suggest you do. By the way, just a word of advice. It's the point to make, though, is this. That's the point to make. You can't necessarily say something is universally right or wrong. Behavior is universally right. That's what the argument would seem to be leading us to. So let me go. Now, I suspect that. Are you Japanese? Oh, good. Because I'm going to talk about Japanese food. Now, because I thought no one in the room can speak Japanese, I naturally translated it into English, which is a lie, because I can't speak Japanese at all. Japanese restaurant, okay? This was a Japanese restaurant in Birmingham. So we have things. But then on the menu was this. Okay, this was on the menu. Sitting down. Not probably the slide to use after lunch. All right? So you sit there and you go, ooh, love that, ooh. Okay, you look at it, most of us maybe go, yeah, but can we genuinely say, I'm terribly sorry, that's disgusting, universally disgusting. You have to hate it because it's wrong. We can't. We can't turn around and say, because you like that, you're an idiot. We can't do. What I liked about this, by the way, on that menu, when everyone was sitting there going, I'll have a biscuit, please. At the bottom was that. That kind of went, oh, okay, I'll leave. You can't turn around and say someone's behavior about food. I mean, that's an obvious statement, isn't it? Obvious statement. You know, you're wrong to like pancakes, yogurt. You can't do that. I'm going to tell a Bulgarian joke. Wait till you hear it. Any Bulgarians? Good. There was a Bulgarian teacher at United World College, and he told me this joke. If you are Bulgarian, you're going to really find it very funny. There's a bench, and on this bench is an old man. That's just setting the scene. And a young person comes on, and he looks at the old man, and he says, stand up, old man. That's the punchline. Now, if you're Bulgarian, you'll be rolling in the aisles. You'll be chewing the carpet. You'll be saying, stop it, Jonathan. It's so funny. What? Can we turn around and say, I'm sorry, the Bulgarians have no sense of humor? We can do that to the Germans, but we can't. Sorry. But we can't turn around and say, your sense of humor is not funny. We can't, because it's not a universal truth that it is funny or not, tasty or not. If you do begin to do that, you can become ethnocentric. If you begin to say, actually, you know what? I'm going to say that those people who eat larvae are wrong. You could be becoming ethnocentric. Now, there's two types. There's this type. I've got no problem with that. No problem. You recognize the fact that there's difference, but you're honest enough to say, not for me. No problem. It's when it becomes this that it becomes a little worrying. And in 2008, an American politician in front of many, many, many thousands of people said this. That begins to worry me. Not because it's Sarah Palin, she should worry anyone. Sorry. Because it's not saying, not for me, it's not saying I understand, it's saying what I am, where I am, is right, and where you are and where you're from is wrong. You're moving towards that. And how many people in this room find that an uncomfortable attitude to start adopting? Quite a few. Man, quite a few of us. We don't want to do that. Look at that. A T-shirt on a 12-year-old boy. How many people would wear that T-shirt with pride in this room? How many would burn it? Or how many would run it out and reuse it? That's a better one. Yes, recycle, that's better. Absolutely, I'll do that. Okay, sorry, no, but okay, but it is worrying, isn't it? And that's, I think, what we have to be careful about. Lovely, lovely, lovely quotation. And I think we all agree on that. Right? So, we move towards this position of cultural relativism, sort of cultural integrity. And I'd like you just to read that, to see if you at least agree on it. Could be quite different, and yet is still valid to the second culture. That is cultural relativism. And I kind of, part of me goes, I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. In Scotland, and I know there's one Scot in this room, she's a colleague of mine, she's sitting at the back, but in Scotland, if you get married in certain parts of Scotland, you sit in a van like that and you get covered in treacle. Wedding ceremony. Everyone here who's engaged to a Scot will say, I now must write and cancel that engagement. But this is apparently, now are we going to sit there going, well, that's stupid, well, that's silly, no one should do that? Of course we're not going to. We're not going to do that. We'll sit there and go, yes, fine. Not for me. Well, actually, my wife probably thought, yes, for you, but not for me. Anything on top of him, bricks, cement, whatever. But, anyway, I think this is a great, great story. This is Papua New Guinea. For anthropologists, Papua New Guinea is El Dorado. It's thousands of different tribes, thousands of different languages, thousands of different customs, thousands of different peoples. It's like New York. But in Papua New Guinea, in some... Thank you for smiling. At least one person found that funny. In Papua New Guinea, there's one tribe. And this is their burial ritual. Let us say it's the grandfather dies. So what they do is they invite everyone around to the house where the grandfather is laid out. Treated, but laid out. Bang, there he is. And everyone has that moment of showing the respect. And then they all go. Now, the Irish call that a wake. But this is where it gets a bit strange. Because this tribe in Papua New Guinea, they do not bury that person. They leave that person out and their cups, and they collect the putrefying liquids of that person. Yes. Okay, and once it's actually decomposed and they've got the liquid, they invite the relatives back and they cook a meal with the juices of the person. Chicken rice a la granddad. Little inappropriate, I would imagine. But that's the tradition. And once it's done, they go there. I don't know, are we going to turn around and say, we can turn around and say, I don't think when my father dies I'm going to have that kind of funeral. I don't know, not for me. But we're not going to turn around and say to this tribe, oh, you shouldn't do that. It's wrong. We wouldn't dare. We wouldn't dare. And if you look at it, they could say, well, it's no different than people dying, taking all their organs out, filling them through scented liquid and keeping them looking alive, like Lenin. ear falls off. Lenin's ear falls off quite a lot, apparently. So it's an extraordinary fact. Oh, what's that? Lenin's ear. Give it back to him. Is that true, Shiv? I don't know. You're... So, but the last point about the cultural... So hopefully I led you to the idea that relativism seems a good idea. But, okay, back to United World College and our mission statement. Okay. This worries me. Now, on the tGELF video, they have this phrase. Yesterday, someone talked about, Bill Gates, I think, about a better world. Whose better world? Who's going to say this world is a better world? Is it us? And if it is us, why is us better world than theirs? What do we mean by a better world? What do we mean when we look at tGELF's thing? Fundamental values. Whose fundamental values? I'm not throwing bricks. But if we look at better worlds, look at the different types of better worlds that there are out there. Is individualism? Is it better? Well, Sue was talking about this. I thought it was a great, great, great image. In the West, we tend to be heroes in a super novel. But elsewhere, we are ensemble actors in a collective play. Collectivism versus individualism. Which is the better world? Interdependence. Independence. I leave my parents behind. I go out. Bye-bye, farewell. My parents say, hooray. Most parents say, don't. I ask the question, if you're going to use the phrase, a better world, start asking yourself this question. What kind of world do we want? And are we talking about impact or imposition? Kind of, And so inevitably, I suppose I have to come here. All right, we all know that story. And I don't want to get into too much debate, but we've got some people saying a better world is freedom of speech. A better world is where we can say what needs to be said. A better world is where we bring to people's attentions the absurdities of the world. Other people say a better world is where freedom of speech is a responsible right and not an irresponsible one. And the do better worlds, better world, ends up with the horrific world of slaughter and fundamentalism and destruction. But we're both looking for a better world. That's the conundrum. It doesn't keep me awake, but it keeps me constantly thinking. Written in 1888, I think. We all want to be cultural relatives. But are we moving towards a situation where we believe in absolutely nothing? Because it's all relative. Oh, it's cultural. Are we moving there? And that's, again, now, I'm not talking about this. I'm not talking about this. This is not a cultural phenomenon. No one would accept that, saying, I'm terribly sorry, hacking people to death in Dhaka is cultural, and therefore we accept it. No one is. Murder is not a cultural phenomenon, apart from perhaps Hermann Göring. All right? It's not. So I'm not talking about that. But what I am perhaps thinking about is going back. Aren't some issues just black and white? How many people here are prepared to say female genital mutilation, it's a cultural thing? It's not for me, but it's fine for them. How many people in this room are prepared to say the outrageous, scandalous, decadent behavior of drunken teenagers in Magaluf? Fine. Not for me, but that's their culture, and so it's okay. How many people are prepared to say, not my culture, but for the Faroe Islanders, it's okay? I wonder. That's why I would call this true colors. Cultural relativism? Yeah? Or actually, are we, through pursuing cultural relativism, becoming anesthetized to ethical imperatives? Are we? And if we are, So, because I do listen to Shiv. Shiv quoted yesterday Mahatma Gandhi. So I'd like to use that quotation again. And it is very familiar. That's what he says. And I think, great. But then he goes on to say that. Right? And we all go, I like that. But then I go back to this. Off my feet by anyway. Whose feet are they? Whose feet are they? Are they his feet? Or are they the culture of his upbringing and the culture of his culture? Is he talking about himself? Or is he talking about influence? A vicious circle. I started by quoting Hermann Göring. I end by questioning Mahatma Gandhi. Ooh. If I have offended, bored, irritated people, may I misquote Hamlet and say, for your forgiveness, much thanks. But that was just ideas on a Wednesday afternoon. Thank you. But I don't mind. Yeah.
Okay, so are there any questions?
Is it a nice question? Is it an easy question? Please, yes, yeah, absolutely.
Sir, in your opinion, do human rights transcend the notions of cultural beliefs?
I think if you identify, you can come to an agreement on what is a universal right. In my personal opinion, it should, yes.
Follow. For example, in some cultures, it's okay to kill the girl child, like honor killings, if she does something wrong. Now, in their culture, that's fine, but human rights say that killing someone is wrong. So, what would you?
But yeah, absolutely. Now, part of me would say, if we are going to follow the logical argument of cultural relativism, then I would say it is something that they have done, that they have believed in, that has emerged through their cultural beliefs. And who am I to actually turn around and say, you can't? And that's cultural relativism. But then I say, have I just been anesthetized towards an ethical imperative? I should sit there and say, no, that's wrong. I don't care who does it, how many times it's been done, why it's been done, the history that led it to still being done. I know, but I'm caught on that cleft stick. That's why I'm not sure whether I'm an anesthetized moron or a crusading relativist. I don't know. But to me, personally, I can't see it. It's like what we've been told today, a child with a gun in his hand. Some cultures will say, yeah, but can we? And yet, if we question that, we're going to actually deny culture. That's why it's about global citizenship. I worry so. What do we mean by global citizenship? Do we mean we accept everything? Do we mean we get rid of everything and accept on something that we all agree with? I don't know. So, typically of me, you ask a question and I can't give the answer. But I think about it. That's the point. Yes?
I really enjoyed your presentation and everything, but you have left me, and if I may say, most of us, a bit perplexed, disturbed, as well as feeling a bit joyous.
Good.
So I'm
Make him laugh. That's my
yeah.
motto. What have you done today, Jonathan? Made a room full of people miserable.
So I just need, an insight again as to the question that you posed is the better world. What is it exactly? So you've actually made me question all the fundamentals that I've been brought up with, or probably I'm going to foster in the near future. So how to deal with this, as to what is the way out? I'm actually searching for it right now. So help me.
I can't. But what I can say is that I don't. Again, I think it's the right thing that if we continue our life with responsible self-questioning, we know that we're going to be going in the right direction. It's when we stop questioning. It's when we stop worrying, when we start saying, I'm not going to think about that. I don't want to get depressed, so I'm just going to go and watch The Sound of Music. Don't do that, by the way. Don't watch. Don't produce The Sound of Music, even if you're tempted. Even if someone comes up and says, "Will you sing?" It's the questioning is so important, and if that brings you to doubt, there's nothing wrong with systematic doubt. There's nothing wrong with it. It's going back to what we've said all the time: great mistake, great doubt. That's all I can't offer anything. No, I'm. Yes, you. Yes.
This might relate to the human rights question posed earlier. Based on the presentation you gave and what you talked about, what is your opinion on the role of the United Nations and the questions and the issues that they say are inhumane and the solutions that they pose? I mean, the resolutions that they put forward that they say should be implemented. What's your opinion on that?
I think they're laudable and wonderful. The trouble with the United Nations is they do talk and talk and talk. Remember what Chris says, the intellectual talks about ideas and not about people. And I think the trouble with the United Nations is an incredible organization, but it's do something about it rather than just talk about it. But what they want to do, who can question? What they want to do, who can question that?
Follow up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some documents like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that most of us in this room would consider to be accurate, something that we would like to foster in the near future. So do you think that relates to what we were saying about enculturation and why we believe that's right?
I think if you wrote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1423, they would be different to what was written. And I think if we want the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 2098, it will be different. I think it's a document that's, honestly, I think it's a document that's capturing a moment in time. I don't think it's a document that's capturing the truth. But that doesn't stop us at this moment in time believing passionately in that declaration. But I don't think it is an absolute.
Thank you.
Okay.
John, so just following up on his question, when we were deciding about, whether we make decisions and become crusaders or whether we don't take decisions and become anesthetized to whatever human rights violations. Like in the past when India was colonized, right? So we had this practice of bride burning of widows burning themselves after, their husband's dead. So like in that, a call was taken and, it was said that this is illegal. And at that time, that was obviously, at that time it could have seen as being crusaders. But then later, as time changed, right now it's acceptable. So even the native culture might change relative. So just taking a call at such a time, so if you take a call and become a crusader, is that not better? And hoping that the culture will change so that later it'll...
Yeah, you're absolutely right. At that point, there came a moment when people weren't going to say it's cultural. They were saying it's wrong.
Yeah.
And it moved forward. And that's why I think we have to always ask the question is, if we're satisfied with the sense of we have to understand other cultures, are we prepared to say at the expense of our own inner ethical beliefs? And I think, with your example of brides burning themselves, thankfully, a lot of people shake off the anesthetics. Thankfully. Yeah? It would be rude of me not to.
Yeah. So I'm basically going to ask you to basically draw a line somewhere in the case of, say, what do you call it? Artistic freedom in this sense. So for instance, in Islam, it's heresy to draw an image of the Prophet, right? But at the same time, for instance, in Hinduism, people get offended. I mean, it's not to the same extent, but obviously, people do get offended if, let's say, there are a bit, I don't know, inappropriate images of your gods drawn. Mm-hmm. So where would you, I mean, I don't think I can use the word objectively, but where would you draw the line between, responsibly employing your freedom of speech and just sort of censoring people that way?
Again, all I can do is give my own personal opinion. And when you cross the line, which is harming other people, physically harming, destroying, psychologically, I think that's when you start questioning, when you're questioning. And you could say, well, the French newspaper Charlie Hebdo was actually harming people's beliefs. I find that uncomfortable because I think that could be a little precious and a little oversensitive. But if you actually are causing, if you hurt somebody intentionally, that's why murder, no culture has really embraced murder. I think that's what, you begin to look at a line, and I'm always really terrified of drawing any line in the sand. But if I was going to go, it could be somewhere around there. If I did that, actually, it makes me look like a horse, so I won't do that. Okay? Again, thank you so much for, and
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I really am sorry if I've ruined your evening. And make a wax effigy of me and start sticking pins in. Okay? That's what you do, I'm really sorry. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir.
tGELF, leading the change.